Guys, you guys are awesome.
Woohoo!
Woo! Yeah, let's give a clap for all our dads.
So today we're doing something special. We know Pastor Justin and Pastor Jessica, we love it when they speak. They have awesome words, but today we're doing like a panel. It's going to be different. We did it first service. It was so awesome. It was so good. We had 3 dads come up. They're going to come up, and Pastor Jessica is going to like ask them questions, and we're going to get to hear all their different like situations, what they've been through in their life, and how they've become dads, and what they're just some little tips for us, and funny stories, and crying stories, and it'll be really good. So we just welcome you up. It's Mark Collins, Josh Merwin, and Pastor Justin.
Yeah, we thought it would be fun to have a dad who has been promoted to a grandpa, too. So
9
he's got
times over.
multiple generations. Then we've got Pastor Justin, obviously, who is a dad of older kids and
Teenagers.
also
I have teenagers
here in the house. And then we've got Mr. Merwin here, who is the dad of lots of young kids. And so we wanted to cover a wide array of different seasons in a dad's life. So that's why we have these guys up here. They're awesome wells of wisdom, and you guys are going to be blessed. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in here.
I want to have Rob start off every service now.
Right?
With his
the dad jokes.
That'd be a great thing to. And he has enough to start off every service for probably the rest of our lives. Like, oh yeah, there's so many that I can remember.
I know, it's so good. All right, so all of you awesome dads, I want to first ask you to share a little bit, because these guys would love to hear about what it was like for you as a child. Give a little quick snapshot for people to understand what your relationship was like with your dad, what your childhood looked like in 2 minutes. Who wants to go first? You got the mic.
Okay, I'll go. Okay.
I did it the first service, I guess, because mine's a little stranger. So I really had my father, to set the stage first, I really wasn't raised with a dad. My father was lived and died on the streets in the end. At least 2/3 of his life, that was the case. He struggled with schizophrenia and alcoholism and things like that. So as a child, initially, I'll use the first 5 years as a child growing up, he wasn't there a lot. When he was there, I was a very hyper kid, and many times the way to put me in line was not the way that we would tell a lot of parents to do. He did have a belt, and we did have other issues. Still loved him, but that was when he was there, and he wasn't there a lot, unfortunately. So I didn't have a father image from age 0 to 5. I was given away a couple times. The last time I was with my great-grandmother, who was born in the late 1800s. She was 65 when she took me, just to inspire anyone that is aged, which I'm a year away or so from 65. But she took me at that age, at the age of 5, and started to raise me. And at that point, I had a fantastic great-grandmother. I mean, she was amazing. But when you have a child that's already kind of angry and upset, and he's starting to get angrier about life, and then other things start to go on, by the time she just couldn't control me, and I didn't have a father. I did not have a father my whole entire life. So that was my beginning. So I'll start with that. I'll leave it at that. It was not normal.
Well, good thing we started with the sad side. And as a small piece of this, I think one of the biggest my parents are the biggest testimony of my life, but when you begin to see their life, you begin to see so clearly what God can do in one generation. Like in one generation, hell literally had the gates put up and said, you can't go any further. And us three kids are proof of that. And I'm like, I am proof of how good Jesus can be in your life. Because that was the reality. I really had no clue of my parents' struggles until I became 16 years old, and then the details started to come out, and I'm like, oh God, I had no idea what you guys went through. And my dad's actually going to be sharing his testimony at What's the Point Ministries in
late
in
July.
about a month.
We're going to figure out the exact date and post it on the website.
It's a crazy testimony.
Facebook.
As I began to hear more and more of it, I'm like, as a kid, you see like the tattoo on your dad's arm, and you're like, oh, my dad's got a tattoo. And then you find out you got that at 12. I'm
Don't
like,
be stealing his stories.
yeah, anyhow, so it's like there's pieces that begin to come out. Yeah, on your 12th birthday. Yeah, there's pieces that begin to come out where you're like, dang, they're so screwed up. And then to see what God did in their lives is extraordinary. Like it's the biggest miracle that I know of that continues to give me faith for what God can do in people's lives as my parents. It's just extraordinary. And so that being said, you heard how he started out. We started out great. The funny thing was that when I look at my life as a child with my dad, it was we were super poor, like dirt poor. You know, my mom was making clothes for us. We were everything was out of the Salvation Army. It didn't matter what it was. Oh, we loved that. Oh, yeah, that worked out well. And we were going to we were in an affluent place, the cheapest house in probably the entire affluent neighborhood, Honeoye Falls, Lima, and then in Fairport. And you were the poorest kids in that bunch. Oh, baby, that makes for some fun time. And you're a skinny redhead. Oh, dear God. I was like, I got scars on my knuckles from all those kids that called me names. And so other than that, though, home life was amazing. Literally was. And for what little they had been given as far as parents, what they produced was extraordinary, what my dad produced, because I remember that he would at times be working 3 jobs to pay the bills, and he would be pushing so hard to see his family provided for that was one of the things that I learned and was inescapable. Like, you provide. And the funny thing is, I know that I don't call this a challenge. I know that Jessica said share a challenge, but I think that for my dad it felt like a challenge, is this concept of I wasn't there enough for you kids. And yet you ask any 3 of us children, and we never felt that way, because somehow in the midst of 3 jobs or often 2 full-time jobs, he would make it to all the ball games. He would make it to, get this, your son is the only kid in the dance crew, the ballet dance crew. And so he made it to my ballet performances. I'm like, yeah, I was that boy. That was me. That was me. I was that kid. That was me. Yep. And picture that. Like, he's like all sports. He's like, go Packers. Packers are his team. Like, go Packers. And I'm over there like, oh, I just want to dance. I want to dance. I like painting and poetry. And my father, I never felt less. I never felt like, oh, I should be the sports guy for my dad. And he loved sports, and he would do sports with me, but I never felt like, you need to do this to be a man. And so that was one huge piece that, looking back on it, you're like, I never heard a negative word about all my different things that I like to do as a boy. And so that was super cool. So the faith was a big thing. The encouragement was a big thing. The perseverance was a big thing. I woke up so many mornings with my dad, so many mornings, rise and shine and give God the glory. And you're like covering your head and like, oh God, I just want to go back to bed. I heard that so many times. But faith was a dramatic, significant part of my life. And so it was a powerful, I had an amazing childhood. So thank you.
Real quick, I just want to add this to this just to show you what Jesus can do, because I see how far he went in his childhood. When I have to add this, on my 12th birthday, because of my anger and people wanting, I had been told once or twice, well, maybe you'd be going back here or going there. You live in fear. On my 12th birthday, the tattoo was just saying, no one's telling me what to do anymore. I'm not taking, this is how mad I was. And actually, to get the tattoo, it was a guy that I knew who was a Hell's Angel. And his deal was, I had to take a needle and thread and sew a American flag on his arm if for him to do the tattoo, you know. So he had to do my tattoo first because he had to be drunk enough for me to do it after, you know. So the tattoo had to come first. This was me at 11. I'm sorry, I just turned 12. So Jesus does amazing things, and that's our whole point here. He can change lives. He can do, and so, you know, that's what I just want to get at. Yeah.
Only a Hell's
right?
Angel will tattoo a 12-year-old.
Thanks for reminding me to do some background. I grew up as a missionary kid in Alaska, serving the different Native people groups up there, and we literally lived in the wilderness. And the best way I can describe growing up was if we didn't shoot a moose, we didn't eat. Or if you didn't catch fish in the summer, you didn't eat. So within the midst of that, from my father, I learned a very, very solid scriptural foundation. I learned some very strong self-discipline, and the challenge in all of that kind of survival environment, it kind of bled into my beliefs about the kingdom, and there was self-discipline became a big part of my life, but self-discipline without love, which is abject misery. But realizing subsequently that with love, even self-discipline can be real joy. So my dad gave me a huge foundation, and it's really cool to reflect back and see with that foundation how God used all of that. And of all the pieces that were missing, Heavenly Father keeps putting those back in. So making me into a better and better dad.
Awesome. All right. So, did you guys have other men in your life that you felt like you saw over the years that God placed as father figures? And if so, tell us a little bit about that, what that was like, having people speak into your life at different seasons.
I'll jump into that one. For me, I guess, subsequent father figures were mostly professional, and not even guys that necessarily realized that they were operating as a father figure. But one of the main things I learned from one gentleman was the freedom to fail. Like, failure is a temporary state. You fail, you get up, you try it again. And as long as you're getting up and trying again, that's a huge secret of success. And then the other one was a guy I worked with who I really learned about the power of identity. He knew who he was, and watching him move in that and watching him move in the confidence of that, the grace I realized that God gave me was being able to glean positive characteristics from the different men in my life. This guy in particular, his identity was all wrong, but the power of him moving in the confidence of that was an awesome demonstration. Even having it wrong, knowing moving in confidence in your identity is incredibly powerful. So from that, I was able to understand the power of identity and understand, okay, that identity isn't right. Go and find out, okay, what is my identity? Because there's real power in that.
Awesome.
So, yes, that works. I'm going to be honest, the only man I had or allowed into my life was Jesus at the point that he came into my life at 23. Prior to that, literally I was really independent, which is obvious. So basically, you have a great grandmother who's loving and kind and compassionate and all the things that the Bible talks about, but you don't have a father figure. And you don't have someone to tell you what to do. So you start to suck it up and man up and whatever else they'd say, no matter what the age. And so I never really, I think the only time I could say that I had, there were a couple, like in school, when I was in 5th grade, I was failing miserably. I had an attitude, I was the one that messed up the whole class, and, they'd put me in a closet or something. It was common, by the way, back in those days, you could put somebody in a closet and they could stay there, And teachers had all kinds of, in fact, Yeah, I won't go there. Teachers had a lot of a lot of things they could do they can't do anymore. But I literally was failing 5th grade and failing miserably. And this one teacher, Mr. Doty, don't know if he was a Christian or not, but I know that he was a strong teacher. And he looked at me and he said, "I'm supposed to leave you back in 5th grade. I'm going to take you to 6th grade with me," because they moved him up. And so I'm like, to me, wow, father figure. Next year, I got straight A's. I was on the safety patrol. I was on safety patrol. In fact, I was at the top of the class and everything, because I had to show him, And then we went into 7th grade high school, and all I saw was a war zone because I was in a really tough neighborhood. And then so I went right back to, all right, war zone, I understand this. But I didn't have a lot of men. Jesus came into my life. I literally, from day one, knew he was my dad. And I, that's another story, but that was my figure.
You already heard I had a great father figure, have a great father figure. And fortunately, because my parents really aimed at putting us into a culture where we would benefit from it, the church that we attended actually my whole life, Bethel in Rochester, was very fortunate to fall into in particular, two men that really impacted my life. One was Pastor Don Bolt, where he is to this day a pastor out in Henrietta of a small church out there. And I grew up with him and his family. His son was my best friend, and his daughter and his other sons they were literally, I don't know if too many people have the benefit of having truly a second family, but I had that amazing, amazing blessing in my life of having what I would call a second family, like clearly a second family. I had the keys to their house, would go and come as I wished. Their fridge was mine, their property was mine. And it was an amazing thing. And sometimes you don't realize what you have because it's your normal until you step away from it, and you're like, man, I want that for my kids too. But I had that, and he was an amazing father figure, a safe place, a very amazing, deep thinker. And so he sowed into my life. And then as I began to hit the teenage years, for those of you who have heard my parents' story, so relationship didn't come natural for them. Meaning what's a normal, when your normal is so far beyond normal, it's like, how do you begin to create normal in your life? And that's what they began to lean into God for. And so one of the things that they didn't teach me a lot of, but thankfully they put me in the right place, was relationship. And I liked girls. I'm like, all these beautiful creatures around me, I have no idea how to interact with them. Like, none whatsoever. And so into my life at around the age of 13, came a youth pastor by the name of Michael Peace. And Michael Peace became one of the most extraordinary influences on how to move in relationship. Not only did he bring me into a leadership capacity at a very young age, but then he began to just teach us what we should be doing with the opposite sex in both ways. And way more than that, but that was one of the most impactful things. And Michael Peace was a 5%er Muslim, hardcore, was going down this crazy path. Jesus got a hold of him, wrecked his life, totally turned it around. And then he became a teacher, he actually has a degree, I forget what level, a degree in teaching. And I just wanted to share this about him as far as how far a father figure can go, is he had a heart for urban youth, like an intense heart for urban youth. And the school that was in his district, Franklin, anyone here ever heard of Franklin High School in Rochester? One or two of you? One of the worst schools in the entire city, hands down. They had the highest teenage pregnancy, in the nation, not in the nation, I think it was per capita it might have been, but practically every teenage girl in that school was almost guaranteed to be pregnant at some point if she was going to that school. It was brutal, and there was nothing that the government or the teachers could figure out to do to stop it. And out of desperation, they bring in this gentleman, Michael Peace, and they say, yeah, you can share whatever you want at this point. Nothing matters at this point because everything we're sharing is not working. And he came with this unabashed message of Jesus, the Father, and abstinence. And the first year that he taught in that school, no pregnancies. Zero. So much so that he was invited to go to Washington, D.C. for a medical symposium to tell all of these PhDs, psychologists, doctors, what's your secret for what you did in that school? What happened? And he's up there and he's like, Jesus. Like, you can take that to the bank. And he saw continued and extraordinary success with that. And this is my youth pastor. And so I stepped in, and he just taught us abstinence. He's taught us what it meant to treat your sisters, the girls as sisters, and the girls treating the boys as brothers. And it was just amazing. And he taught me things about relationship. It's like the beauty of fathering is that it's not just one man that fathers a child. In a healthy Christian community, it becomes multiple men, because no single man has all the answers. Not one of us in here has all the answers. And so Michael Peace was a really profound influence on me. And yeah.
So just mention real quick about you and Tanya.
Oh, so the impact that he had on our family was my youngest sister, at the altar, was her first kiss. And it was really intense. It was like a lunge, like predator lunge. Like, it was like whoosh. And that was pretty amazing. Yeah, to a standing ovation. It was like the Bills had won the Super Bowl. I'm not even kidding. Everybody up on their feet, a big church, like shouting and screaming, like because she had made it to the altar. And this was Michael Peace's influence in our life. And my parents wanted it too. They're just like, I don't know how to get the kids here. We were doing things at their age that we're not ever going to share with them. And so it was amazing. And then for me, because of what Michael Peace taught me, I never dated anybody until I met Jessica. And then I just felt this clear movement with God. And she is the only woman I've ever known in any capacity. And so I am living proof. I am a living testimony for Michael Peace, as are many, many youth that surround him, and living proof that abstinence and that pursuing people in the right way is actually a possibility. And so it's amazing.
I love being in the middle now. Just two quick things. One, a shout out to Michael Peace. One of the reasons we went to that church was because of Michael. Yolanda and I went there, and we met Michael, and we met all the other people. And what it is I'm just telling you, to raise up a child in the way they should go, you want them around Christians. You want them around people that are strong, moving forward in the Lord. And we saw that. And that was that's why the kids were there, because we made that decision. And I just want to say the other thing is, oh my gosh, rap every day.
Oh, that's right. He was the grandfather of Christian rap. Literally, he was traveling all over the world, touring, rapping. And so I got all of his cassettes.
Yes.
Every day.
I love too that you mentioned that your parents would drive over half an hour multiple times a week, 45 minutes to put you in that environment. Yeah, not if Dad was driving. But that was the recognition that they had for the value of that community. So.
Helping out at the church and stuff.
They would be hiding in the attic.
Yeah, we knew that church like the back of our hand, I'll tell you what, at an early age.
All right, well, so next question. How did becoming a father affect you?
Me? Wait.
He was the grand finale, wasn't he?
Okay.
For that one.
How did having children affect me? Well, the truth of the matter is, I was a stone cold mess. As much as I hate to say it, as was my wife, and and absolute truth. And it was when we had lived in 7 places in less than 2 years. I can name the places, tell you the streets. In fact, when we were first pregnant when she was first pregnant with our first daughter, we were living upstairs in a room in a friend's house. And then we moved to Clinton Avenue, and then Monroe Avenue, and then out to her parents' house, and then they followed us to the next place that we bought, that we rented, and then we rented another place. All in 7 years. I was a mess.
2 years.
We were a mess. 2 years, I mean. 7 places, 2 years. And so the thing is that I'm just trying to give you the picture. I couldn't hold down a job. I was angry. I thought everybody was hypocrites. I'd look at my bosses and I'm like, you're a hypocrite. Don't tell me what to do. I did my job. I'm done. You know, I would look at church people because I saw hypocrisy in the church. You know, I watched a young pastor get let go just because, you know, the older congregation wasn't happy with him, and he was the one that inspired me to even start thinking about the Lord. And then I'm like, hypocrites, I see your children. They're a mess. I see this, I see that. You know, I saw hypocrisy all over the place, and I couldn't stand it, and then I couldn't work for hypocrites. That was tough enough as it was. And so I couldn't hold down a job. And then when our daughter was born, and she was just about a year old, I just looked after living in 7 places, and I said, this girl's in big trouble. Where's she going? So I contemplated 2 things, and one was life. Is it worth it? The way I'm living? Should I? Is it anything really worth it? And then the second one was, I had already tried transcendental meditation and Jesus and Eckankar and all this other stuff, you know. And I started to talk to Jesus, and he started to talk back. In my house. Nobody around, no churches, no anything. My wife will tell you. Because I came downstairs, and I walked downstairs, and I said, I'm going to follow Jesus. And it shook her, which it would normally. She's like, well, if you become a fanatic, I'll leave you. And, you know, and I was so hit. I said, I hate to say this, but you got to do what you got to do. I'm following Jesus. She, you know, in turn did the same thing a couple weeks later. And but prior to that, so children, how did that affect it? That daughter, I looked at her, I'm like, it's not going to be good. You know, Jesus changed all of that, all of it. And he's amazing what he can do for your life, what he can do for the lives of your kids. And I could just go on and on and on, but that's what children mean to me. Children are children, especially realizing that I am a son of God. When he started to talk to me, he said to me, the first thing was, and I'm telling you, I remember this vividly. I said, oh, I guess I'll do, what do I need to do, God? And I heard this, just go someplace and follow me. I will show you, I will teach you. If you'll give your life, surrender to me and give your life to me, I will show you. And I'm in prayer in this attic. And I'm like, okay, I have a problem, God. What's that? Hypocrites, I see them. You know? He's like, as long as your eyes are on the hypocrites, you're the biggest one. And I went, like, that's when you knew God was talking to you, right? Because I'm like, I wouldn't think that. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So what do I do then? He goes, I'm telling you, give your life to me. I will teach you how to be a light. You just go, whatever church you land in, it doesn't matter. Nobody's perfect, no matter where you go. Just you be a shining light, and I will teach you. I will teach you how to be a dad. I will teach you how to be a parent. I will teach you how to be a loving husband. I will teach you how to be anything that you want. And I knew none of those things. All I knew was anger, and I'm a guy, and I ain't playing games. Don't play with me. Don't give me none of your trash. I don't want to hear it. I'll roll my cigarettes up so you can see my tattoo, and we'll do it that way. And God changed all of that. And all I can tell you is that it started with the child.
So good.
Having kids dramatically changed me. The first is, like, deepening in an understanding of love. That's I think a lifelong thing, but kids catapulted me out of this very shallow understanding I had of love into this starting to grasp what unconditional love looks like, and changed my relationship with God in terms of, okay, now I've got an inkling of what he feels toward me. And then the other thing with kids was just watching how they interact with me and kind of laying that over how I interact with my Heavenly Father. And a big one is just my expectation of him. My kids get dinner every night, and it gave me new revelation into be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. there's no reason for my children to be anxious about, is there dinner? And in looking at God's provision for me, there is zero reason for me to be anxious about, is he going to provide? Let him know what's going on, absolutely. Thank him for it, even before you see it. And that gratitude component in seeing, like I always see, like, okay, I'm supposed to reflect the father heart of God as a father, and seeing how gratitude from my children affects my heart gives me this huge insight, even though it's me, a human being created in the image of God, how my gratitude affects his heart. And not like he provides, but that understanding of what gratitude does to somebody's heart, now he wants to pour out. So understanding unconditional love a little better, and just changing how I interact with God as my father, as a provider, as somebody that he wants to know what I'm feeling. He wants to receive from me, actually, my love. He wants to receive my gratitude. That blesses him. So that kids changed my life, absolutely, especially as far as my relationship with God.
Amen.
So good.
So good. Yeah, kids really changed me. My two sitting right up there in the front row. Actually, why don't you guys stand up for those who don't know? These are my children, my little children, my son and my daughter. And I'm like, no father could be prouder, I'm sure of it. And you literally feel that as a dad. But I think one of the simple thing, because these guys hit some pretty big things, a simple thing, two things. One is that your private life becomes your public life. Anybody that knows with children, you know that, you guys ever seen that show, like what is it, Kids Say the Darndest Things? Like, the first time I heard my son say crap, I'm like, that sounds so vile coming out of a child. And I'm like, oh man. I'm like, maybe I say crap too much. And even when you first hear your kids say something like, darn it, I'm like, don't say that. And you begin to realize that for them, like, that's the normal, and they don't think there's anything wrong with that, and suddenly the private things that you do at home, you don't realize are suddenly on display for all the world to see through your children. And I'm like, I better tighten up some stuff with how I do things. That was a fun one, as it really begins to make you sit there and examine your own life and the things you say and the things you do, because your kids, like, let's be honest, your kid blowing up with anger, you're like, where did they get that from? I have no idea where they got that from at all. I can't even believe they would do that. And everyone's like, yeah, yep, nope, we know why. It's not always the case, but often. So that's a big one that really began to change me. And actually, in a healthy way, it exposes the things that need to be exposed in a really healthy way. You mature, hopefully, you begin to mature very quickly when you have children, like really quickly, in a powerful way. So they brought something really powerful like that into my life. And the second piece was, I had always struggled to see God. How do I say this? I saw this picture of, without realizing it, this subconscious concept of God, like everybody has to be the same. Like you got to imitate Christ. You got to be like God. And I didn't realize in my heart that actually meant we're all robots, and there was no room for the color and the beauty in creation and in life. And what happened with Judah and Eleanor is as I'm sitting there, I'm falling in love with who they are. This is an ongoing process, but early on began to fall in love with who they were and the difference that was there. They're so different from me, and still the same in many ways, but so different. And I love that, and I cherish it. Like with Judah, he understands technology. I thought I loved technology. I realized with where my son is going, I only like technology. He loves technology. He understands technology in a way that he'll sit there and he'll be like writing code. And I'm like, oh God, that's like hell. That's like Dante's some level of hell. And he's over there like, well, watch what I could do. And I'm like, I don't understand this at all. This is a completely foreign language to me. And the way that he understands those things, and I love it. And so I begin to say, oh man, I want to put my resources behind my son's dreams and these unique things that are like him. And with Eleanor, oh, most of you know that she's an artist that blows my mind. I'm like, you're doing what? I'm drawing like Calvin and Hobbes at her age. And she's over there doing portraits of people. And I'm like, what is that? Like how? And I love it. And I'm excited about the next thing that she's going to do. And as I see her developing in this capacity, I'm like, I begin to throw who I am behind seeing her become that person. And I began to realize, oh man, God doesn't want robots. Why was I trying to be this certain, I am trying to be this image that I have of God, and the entire time he's screaming out like, I love you. I love what makes you unique. And I was missing that for like too much of my life. And even though my parents actually encouraged me, like my dad encouraging me to be the dancer and the artist, which of course is more in my mother's direction. And so they encouraged me, but somehow I got this real messed up view of God and godliness and began to see through my children that he loves my uniqueness. He loves the things that make me tick, and he's actually throwing his weight behind me becoming that person. And so that was a huge revelation through my children. So thank you, children.
That's good.
That's it.
All right, so if you were able to give one piece of wisdom that you've picked up along the road to men, old men, young men, fathers, not yet fathers, what would you say is one of the most important things that you've learned that you want to pass on to the men today from being a dad?
Dessert first. Firm believer in this. That's all there is right there. How else can you fully enjoy it if you don't eat it first? No.
Hey, you guys are lucky. There was like no laughing. There was so much crying in the first service that I think the pendulum swung the other way now.
Yeah, we're like, let's keep it a little happier. It's Father's Day.
It was very moving, though.
It was. Every service is different. But for me, it came down to one very simple phrase. That it's a phrase that guides my life. And I think I saw it played out most with my kids, with my daughter in particular. But it's a phrase that has guided me now in like every situation. But it's this simple thing: what does love look like? Like, what does love look like? And that has become the plumb line for everything, actually, and everyone that I'm dealing with in every situation, because it was something that I started saying to the kids as they were fighting with one another. And I actually didn't hear anybody say it, so if somebody else has coined it, cool. But I'm like, what does love look like, huh? This is what love looks like? And I'm like, and as I'm shouting, I'm like, and that's not what love looks like either. So the irony of it all. And so with my children, I began to realize, like, what does love look like? And one of the most, in every situation, like, what does love look like? And we have Jesus that expresses that so perfectly. If you ever question what God's love looks like, it is unequivocally answered in the person of Jesus Christ, and that becomes my center point for what love looks like. And so in that place, I remember with Eleanor in particular, Eleanor and I are very similar personalities. When you're a very similar personality, clashes will come with certain pieces of your personality. And with Eleanor and with me, we are very persistent people. And when we believe something, we believe it. And the hard part is when we both believe something different, there comes this need to try to convince each other, whether it's about laundry or whether it is about how to do schoolwork or when to do schoolwork or dishes or any of that. And I began to, in our movement, and I've given the kids permission to actually approach me on this again and again, I began to realize there are moments where I don't look like love. Where when my daughter or my son is seeing my face in a moment and I'm over there barking something out, like you begin to catch yourself and you begin to realize, is this the face of love? Is this actually the face of love that's being portrayed towards my children? And Eleanor and Judah both will now be like, this doesn't feel good. And I'm like, I know I gave you permission to say that and to tell me that I'm being angry, but not right now. And
Not when I'm angry.
and the crazy part is, it began to shift me and change me because I realized that love actually looks like something to the people around you, and especially to your family. And I saw that as I began to gain control of myself in our arguments, and Eleanor will definitely testify to this, I would stop and I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, Eleanor. This is not right. This is not how I should be approaching this. I'm sorry for being angry. And I could actually feel the softening begin to happen inside of me in like that moment. And the cool part was that as we have gone on with this, now I see my daughter doing it because we have very much in common. And that quick to respond, that we are very emotional beings. We are very like passionate beings, and that comes out in so many good ways and some not so good ways. And now I watch as she has seen that example, that her and I've seen this so many times. She'll be upset as I'm like, you have to do the dishes. It's 11 o'clock at night. And she's like, but Dad, she's starting to plead her case, and she knows my stance on it. And in the midst of that, and she sees me like rising up like, oh yeah, okay, we're gonna have a talk about this. And I'll see her in the moment, her anger beginning to come out, and then suddenly the shift. And I've seen this so many times with her, where I can see that she's choosing love. For me, she's choosing love for the situation, and she's choosing to not let anger win. And for me, that was extraordinary to see that movement in her life, and it means a lot to me. And I see her do it again and again, and I'm like, love wins because love looks like something. And it's born out of that. It's like, what does love look like? And so that's for you men, and I guess it's really for everybody, but like in every situation, if you can begin to ask yourself that question in what you're doing and give the people closest to you permission to say, is this what love looks like? It will challenge you in ways that will make you challenged. But it will also begin to bring you into alignment with the character of who God is in such a powerful, powerful way. So that's my piece.
So good.
That was 2 minutes, right?
Just to clarify, nobody said, okay, boys, wear blue shirts. That was just all Holy Spirit.
We got the dots, he's got the lines.
That's great.
For me, I think the biggest piece of wisdom for fathers specifically is in moving through healing in my own life, in getting sozos, in doing counseling, and realizing, okay, there's all this stuff that kind of stacked up, and there's this huge burden as a father that came on me to be, oh boy, how many sozos are my kids going to need? How much therapy are they going to need?
Sozos, it's inner healing ministry for anybody that doesn't know.
And the realization that actually, no, I'm to be a reflection. He created me to reflect Him. He created me in His image. And everything I can do in His grace to reflect that Father's heart to my physical children, my spiritual children, do that. But I am not called to be the perfect father. I'm not called to be that perfect father He is. And as a father, that's our secret weapon. If we know Heavenly Father, we get to reflect Him to our children. But we first and foremost say, that's the good father. Follow Him. Yes, I'm going in the same direction. You're welcome to follow me where I'm following Him. But I'm not going to nail it. I don't have to. I've got this. I've introduced my children to the perfect father. And I do my best. And that's where we all end up, usually talking about our dads. Well, they did their best. I do my best. But I've realized that's my secret weapon. That's my freedom. And the key is, let your children see that. Let them see you grow. Let them see you be challenged by Holy Spirit that this area of your life isn't what it should be. Approach your own children in humility. Like Justin was saying, if your kid calls you on your crap, have the humility to say, oh, you're so right. Apologize to your children and move with them where they have a heart to reconcile whatever happened in that moment where that relationship was damaged. Reconcile with them. And then in doing that, demonstrate to them, this is how you have good relationship. And especially to sons, this is how fathering looks. I'm doing my best to reflect it, but I know the perfect image of that, and I get to show them that. So that would be my words of wisdom. Point your children to the Heavenly Father. Do your best to reflect it, and in reflecting it, always be willing to engage your children in humility, because they're powerful people too. And a relationship is them investing and you investing. And when they're feeling that, all right, this relationship isn't where it needs to be right now, be willing to accept that and change. And let them see it. Then they know how to do it right.
That's so good. Thanks, Josh. Go for it.
So I do want to tell one story, a couple things, and then I want to speak to everyone, and especially the older dads that are here today, because I do have something for that. But I just want to go back to the learning from your children, and I want to tell you all, first off, well, let me do this. I was telling earlier today the story about there was a time when I got upset with my kids. All three of them had done something they weren't supposed to do. I don't know if it was the tree incident. I don't know. These kids they'd come up with so much stuff. Like, I'm like, are you guys sure you're born again? No, again. They would literally be paint on the trees and outside.
They were like 200-year-old huge oak trees, and we had a corner property.
Right.
Everybody drove by, and we're out there spray painting the trees.
And so they came up with they were very creative, I mean, it was the time of, when the what was the movie, Home Alone? That didn't help the kids any. But but I remember I got up and I'm like, with the kids, I'm like, I can't believe you did this, you're getting upset, like, what is this? I mean, and you look at this and you watch them. I watch my kids, as the two oldest ones, the smarter ones, I think, moved back, a step or two from Dad, right? The other one, she's looking at me, she's like, then she goes, I'm like, what's happening? What's this? That's love no matter what. That is Jesus, if anything, straight up, like, because I think of my whole life, and I'm like, there are a lot of times when there was no reason for Jesus to love me, I mean, I've made my issue, as we talked about. But the thing I want to say, a couple things, is we all make mistakes, okay? There are no perfect people here, and like I said, Jesus gave me that realization, and he had to aim at me first to show me, hey, you're not perfect, so if you think anybody else is, don't judge. And any church I've been in, any place I've been, there are imperfect people learning. We're all learning. I really believe that when my day is up, that that I'm going to look back and go, whoa, I could have changed that. I could have fixed this. I probably shouldn't have done that. I'm always learning. It doesn't stop. I don't think there's anybody my age or older that would say right now, you haven't learned something in the last year or two. We just keep learning. So here's what I'm going to tell you is this. Paul talked about running a race, okay? I realized for the first time just recently, and it was a hard thing to realize, that I am now a grandfather, and it's now the race is, I think in the end, you're supposed to sprint, right? So I'm in the sprinting stage. Hallelujah. So, I got some brothers here. And so, but the thing is this, okay? It's to press on. If you made mistakes, Paul clearly said, forgetting those things that are past, we press on. You got to let it go. I've made mistakes. I'll make mistakes tomorrow. You know what? For me, it hasn't been a problem because I know he's my dad. I just go, all right, Dad, let's straighten it up and keep going. I don't have time. I don't have time to live in it. If you live in it, you will live in it. If you receive it and stay in it, you will stay in it. what God wants of you, and that includes older people. Listen, yeah, I got 9 grandkids now. Every time I see them, yeah, I talk to them about Jesus. I pray with them. I play with them. That's a given, and it's a great time. But I am never going to. I would encourage you all to know this: no matter what age you're at, if you don't have kids or you don't have grandkids, look over to the kids that are around you, or to your relatives' kids, your aunt's kids, your sister's kids, your cousin's kids. I don't know who it is, but if you're going to be a shining light, that's the mission Paul had. Paul had a mission to see lives changed, to see people saved, to see new life come about. And that comes about by us not living in ourselves. You know, I so often see, it's great to do this sozos. It's great to do this classes. I believe in all that stuff, by the way. It's all great stuff. It's great to read, okay? I got 40 years in the Lord, all right? I could put in all day, but what he wants you and me to know is he's already in you. He wants to get out, okay? He wants to get out to your neighbors. He wants to get out to your friends. He wants to get out to your relatives, all right? So we got to get past all the moments of, oh, poor me, or look what I've been through, or look what I've done, or look what I've this or that, and start spreading the good news and seeing lives changed. Every person here has the ability to see lives changed and see amazing, amazing miracles and things happen. And one life changed, it says, angels in heaven are rejoicing. I mean, just be there. And how do you do that? You just love. You just learn to love, and you do what the Bible says. Give of yourself. Love, compassion, love. Somebody says, like, my father-in-law, I want to do this story quick. Am I doing too long? Can I get another minute? One more 30 seconds?
Minute.
One more minute? Yeah. I promise to try. My father-in-law, and Yolanda's stepfather, and he, through all the time my kids were coming up, he and many of the relatives would, every time we'd come to a meeting or get together, they would abuse us. I mean, they would talk to the kids and find out every wrong thing the kids were doing so that they could make a point. Oh, you're Christians, aren't you? And look what you do. Look how you are. Look at them. They're throwing a little fit. They can't be Christians. You know, they'd find anything they could to hinder or make us look less, okay? But we stayed the course, and we kept going to the get-togethers, and we kept going to the meetings. And you don't take it personal, because Jesus stood on the cross and said, what'd he say? Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And you stay the course. No matter what your age, you love them. You show compassion. Forget it. Forget anything you've known. It's this day on. And know this, you can change lives. My father-in-law we ended up a year and a half before he was dying. He didn't have enough money. None of the relatives, nobody would take him in. The same guy that abused us for 30 years, we took in and gave him a place to live and loved him. And he said, Mark, he started telling me, Mark, I'm sorry. 30 years, okay? We put up with 30 years of hardness. Looks for that one. I didn't even care about the sorry. You know what I wanted to hear? Which he did on his deathbed. He said, Mark, would you talk to Jesus for me? I said, I've been talking to him. I said, apparently you believe in him. And he said, I do. And I said, then you're about to talk to him right now. And that brought so much peace and so much joy. But 30 years of nagging. So I'm telling you, forget that. Don't take it personal. Love like Jesus loved. Care like Jesus cared. Give like Jesus gave. And you'll see amazing things in your life, and I don't care what age you are. And if you're older and you got this habit that I hear a lot of older people do, and they're like, well, in my day. And I used to say to my great-grandmother, because she was born in the 1800s, like, my grandma, bread was a nickel back then, okay? In my day, forgetting those things that are past, you be amazing now. Work with what you got now. Live in what you're living in now, and you will see changes in everybody you want to see changes in. And if not, you will at least make an effect on them. And that's all I got. It's so simple. I'm sorry. I had to do it.
That's great. Josh still got to answer the question, right? No, he did. You did? Oh, good. Okay, good. All right. Well, it is 1 o'clock, so were you guys blessed by something that... Yeah. Josh said he got one more quick thing.
One of the questions we didn't have a chance to get to, I think is super critical, is how do you engage the fathers in your life, especially as you're pursuing father figures and spiritual fathers. And the context of how I grew up was, it was a very elder honoring culture, because you could learn skill set for survival, but to really thrive, you had to learn from those who had gone before. So look for those who have gone before. They know how to do it well. You've got a skill set, but those who have gone further, they know how to do it well. So posture yourself in a place with a heart of honor. Posture yourself to receive and express gratitude for what you do receive. Because most father figures don't realize that they're a father figure. They don't even realize everything they have to give, everything that's in them to pour into others. But as soon as you start to receive and express that gratitude, you will be astonished at how most will begin to move into that identity. I am a father. I have something to give. Even for those who aren't physical fathers, those who have gone before have a lot to offer. We learn from them how to thrive, not just survive, how to thrive. So honor, be willing to receive, and express gratitude. And that will dramatically change every father figure relationship in your life.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you guys so much. That was awesome. Wasn't that so good? Did you guys learn something? Wave at them if you learned something. It's always encouraging to me when I preach or teach. So it looks like lots of people were touched today. So we're going to close in prayer. So Josh, I had Mark do it last time. How about you close us out in prayer as we go forth to celebrate and honor our dads, our spiritual dads, or remember those dads maybe that aren't with us, but honor their memory with storytelling today and giving thanks. I love that piece. So if you would close us out in prayer to send us off. So yeah, if you guys want to stand.
Papa, thank you that today is the day that we celebrate fathers. And God, we honor the fathers in our lives. God, even the fathers that did the best they could, thank you for everything that they poured into us, everything that they could pour into us. And thank you, God, that you bless that investment, that you multiply that investment. And God, that even those things that were poured in that did not shape us in the direction you had for us, you are redeeming those. You flip those on its head, God. And in your kingdom, those become strengths as you redeem and restore and replenish. And Papa, today, I just say to you, happy Father's Day. We love you so much.
Yes.
Happy Father's Day.
Amen. All right, well.